Pro Tem Duplantis.
Here.
Commissioner Moya.
Here.
Commissioner Villanueva. Commissioner Arias.
Here.
Okay, and our first item of discussion is regarding task committee for recreational marijuana. Mark, you gonna lead that or?
No, ma'am, this is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
It was something that we said we start discussing more frequently now with this on the table. So I'm gonna leave it open to the commissioners.
Okay. So District 1, is that Paul?
No, that's me.
You, okay, and you said yours?
It's Robert Lucero and Jerry Lopez.
Okay, District 2,
Oh,
He'll be-
late.
okay, District 4, or 3, me. Okay, I so far I only have one, and that is, Matt Bednoise. District 4,
Yes, and I have reached out to Mr. Larry Smith with Safari, Motel Safari, and I'll be waiting to hear back from him on his schedule, but I have confirmed with Mrs. Andy Bond.
okay, and District 5,
Al Patel and Mr. Leif.
okay. So, do we need to set up meetings for this?
Well, I think what we had discussed was, for the work sessions, spending time on discussing this so we can move within the next, because we don't have a whole lot of time before this ordinance has any effect.
Okay,
So we want to have a good idea where we want the zoning, so these people that are coming in, they're not going to be buying properties or leasing properties and finding out later that the zoning's not going to be in those areas. So.
It'd be a good idea if, even to the advisory board, so they can be more in tune, is if we were to give them our opinion where we feel comfortable seeing the product being either, and there's three levels, and that is what we call the growers, and then, you know, where you, whatever you call it, the agriculturally, and then we have the processing where you dry it and you process it, and then you have what we call the dispensary where it becomes a storefront.
What about the lab?
And the lab, but I guess the lab wouldn't be that big of a deal as long as it's in a commercial, but we do have to include it because then I don't want them coming back wanting us to do that. I think the lab, if they decide to make a lab, I have one person interested in doing the lab. And the lab wouldn't be that big of a deal as long as it's in a commercial zone area. Because it really just does the testing of the strength, the bash, because and the lot that you have to have when you sell the product and be able to track it where it came from. And that's mandated by the state to have that on the THC strength. So the lab's not that big of a deal, up to the board to decide they want to incorporate it, but it probably wouldn't be good in a dispensary. It probably wouldn't be good at somebody's growers because that's an independent. There are not very many labs in New Mexico. And then what happens to the lab, they're able to contract with whoever is doing the production. Let's say Chris has 200 plants, and then he can bring his 200 plants to see the THC links in it and what other chemicals that the state of New Mexico is requiring. So, and that would be one good, to be honest, industrial thing, because they're hard to come by, and I think when we started medical cannabis, we hardly had one, and we finally got one, and I think we have maybe 2 or 3. But still, that would be ideal for New Mexico, particularly Cary, because of the location, and people will bring it from other communities to have tested, because that's going to be mandated by the state of New Mexico.
where would be a good place for a lab?
My thoughts, when we first initially talked, and in a little bit, I'd like to have Mr. Patel come up and read off what he's come up with. He's actually, looks like he's done some really good research. He brought something like this to me a couple of weeks ago as well, when we first started discussing this. But we initially, and you know, of course, not has been, but we were looking at the industrial area is actually a good area where we can start trying to push some of the growers. We can utilize a lot of our stuff. especially these blighted areas. You know, the industrial area has not been really utilized in I don't know how long. And I'm gonna use Worley Mills that's a big piece of property. We've got a lot of these older buildings that are good size and probably would make a good place to zone some of these processing areas. And then the labs, you know, I think the labs could be zoned in the same
I'll be
area.
honest with you, they probably will only, if we're lucky, we'll get one in this town.
Mhm.
The machine alone is $150,000.
Oh, wow.
Just the one machine. And we still need the other. You can find used ones, but who wants a used one? You know, that's what it is.
Yeah.
They run for 100. The guy who talked to me, he say, I don't know, he runs one lab in another state completely. And I said, well, I guess we could put you anywhere. And he says, no,
I
he
don't
says,
see why it couldn't be
as
the
long
lab
as it's on
couldn't, yeah.
commercial.
Yeah. You know, and that's what we're looking at. We've also discussed, at the last meeting, that south of the boulevard, we'd have to take, south of the boulevard on First Street, we have to look at that a little bit different because there are a lot of residents up there. And even though it's commercial, you know, different ways we can look at it. We don't have to say no. I think we should go through like what we do with planning and zoning. When somebody wants to build something outside their zone, they have to get permission from those in a certain radius. But even if we got just one lab, I think having
We'd be
it
lucky
zoned,
to.
having it zoned
And
with
then
where
having the person
processing
with
is.
the credentials to be able to run it.
So-
He said the only thing he would like to have is good, what is it called, good protection or it will not. So, you know what I mean? In other words, so the police and everybody guards the area. It's not their area, but I mean the community area over there. They don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Can the broom factory be used for something?
That would have to be asked of him.
So that's something, I'm gonna have to probably reach out on a federal level. The only thing that I brought up previously is it's still illegal on a federal standpoint. So, we don't wanna jeopardize any of our grant funding. We do receive federal pass-through funds, clean water, state revolving loan fund, drinking water funds, things of that nature. So, I probably have to reach out to someone at the federal level to get that answer.
I would kinda, you know, try to steer away from that anyway, because if we utilize that to, unless we're gonna use it, because we had discussed, because the city does have property. And if we can do that, lease the property to these individuals and create a revenue for the city.
I mean,
If we're able to do that, you know, and I can see what Mark's coming from, and being illegal federally, is that gonna affect us?
Our grant, because any grant, because we're not violating the federal.
Well, nothing would prevent us from selling the property as well, correct, as long as we follow the state guidelines and.
Correct, as long as we go through the process, there's a few properties we discussed last meeting that, are be going out for appraisal now. That includes, the old Worley Mills area, the area by the airport, Mr. Gable brought up, Broomcorn Factory, and I think there's another, there's 3 or 4 different, properties.
So I guess I'm not familiar with Worley Mills, where's that at?
Where Versatile has his
Out there by
rental,
Del
has his trucking or construction.
Okay.
We have multiple opportunities. One of the things I did as well within the past couple of weeks is speak with a company that's wanting to bring a solar farm here. And some of the property they've been looking at for quite some time is the land not being utilized by Versatile, which their contract is up and it's past due. So once we get the appraisal, we could get a fair market value and decide if we either sell it to those entities or put it up for auction and the highest bid gets it.
Yeah, this might be our opportunity to release ourselves of some of these properties that we've been holding on to for quite a while.
Especially if they're just sitting there not being put to use, we could put them to good use, either anything that's gonna be great for the town. I mean, that's the main thing.
So I guess Commissioner Moyle or Mayor Pro Tem, I know you guys have done a lot of research on this. In the last meeting that we had on this, I brought up the idea of maybe bringing in a consultant in the industry. Is there anyone that you have met in your research that we might be able to bring on board?
Well, there's one that's was supposed to, he's staying at his motel. They're coming in tonight. He does a lot of consulting for Colorado, and I'll be the first one to tell you I did hire him to come and give me consulting. But he's not coming in tonight. He's coming in tomorrow. He's flying to Albuquerque and getting a car down, and I'll let you guys meet him. But he knows a lot. I don't know what his credentials are, but I know that he does consulting throughout the other states. you know? And, I had him come in because I had a lot of questions, so he's coming in to meet with me Friday, Saturday, and I think he leaves off Saturday night, but if you guys wanna talk to him, I'll have it available for you guys.
So you're utilizing him to consult for you personally?
Yeah, for me to be more aware, since we have a lot of, agricultural property, and then before I do an investment, I get the expertise to come in and let me know what the probability and the possibilities are, and he's one who has extremely good knowledge. If you guys wanna talk to him, I'll make it available for you guys.
Yeah, well, I guess and I'd like Mark to visit with him if that'd be okay,
Sure.
if you have time. in your
Yeah,
schedule,
he'll be here
to See if
tomorrow.
he'd be a good fit to consult with the city.
I'm off tomorrow. I'm planning to leave town, but if you know what time you'll be here, we'll be here in the morning.
I don't know what time this, I wish I'd have known I'd have got the flight.
I might.
I was just blowing it off because, I didn't know he would have anything, but he can come.
It's early afternoon. I could.
Okay, I will, yeah, let me call tonight, give me a call and I'll find out what time he's flying into Albuquerque.
I'd even be,
Because
No conversation.
right now he has some interest in some of the, things in Colorado, but he's, liquidating them to just become more of a consultant permanently.
Another thing that came up, I don't want to jump too far off course, is still pertaining to this. The judicial system has reached out to different municipalities to see what our thought is as far as limitations on where to smoke it. Similar to smoking cigarettes in restaurants or bars or private clubs, whatnot. If we're thinking of passing some ordinance to restrict it only to, say, little back smoking lounges, or if it's gonna be allowed up front. I don't even know what the state's gonna mandate. If it has to be indoors, if it's outdoors.
Personally, just me personally, there's already laws against smoking in certain areas, and it should pertain to this too, because it can be, whereas cigarette smokes can be offensive to some people, this can be offensive to
It's
some
gonna be
people.
about the same.
No reason in, if there's a private club that wants to allow that, like, the Elks used to allow smoking in their Legion, then that's up to that private company, but in public, I just, like the parks,
They can, that's,
I think that's kind of pushing it, a
Yeah.
little bit.
I think right now with the medical cannabis, you're not allowed to have in any public building or any public park or any federal building or land, that's federal. You're allowed to, smoke in your own privacy, and that's on the medical aspect, but on the recreational, it's gonna be a little more open. They are now meeting to do the rules and regulations of it, and we'll have more of a clarification, but those other ones are more federal laws.
one thing I was curious about, and I don't know if this might be an appropriate place, but it's like if someone's driving down the road and, they hadn't smoked in that day, but they get pulled over and accused of driving under the influence, it's obviously gonna be in their system, so how is that gonna be handled? Chief, do you know anything on that?
That's what they're talking about all over the country right now. They're trying to develop intoxilizers type equipment for cannabis, but because it remains in the bloodstream, even after the effects are gone, they're having difficulties with that. This whole cannabis situation is changing the landscape on search and seizure, on what is not legal and what is. The odor or smell of marijuana will not be probable cause anymore, because you're talking about now something that's available legally. So it's gonna undo the Ross decision and all these Supreme Court decisions that we've had before. It's gonna undo them. So they're fighting that everywhere right now.
Actually, THC stays in your blood system for 30 days. Actually, Colorado has developed ways to deal with this type of situation. What they do, it's almost treated at the same level as DUI. They're required to get whatever, but they have a way of testing it in Colorado. And the reason I know that, because in Clayton and some of the clinics we have closer to Colorado, some people have been out there and gotten busted, and now they're mandated to come when they can return home to comply with the requirements because they put them on probation. because it's the same level of intoxicating a person who's drunk.
It'll be a different procedure. We're gonna have to retrain officers to be drug recognition
Would you mind
experts.
going to the mic, please?
We've already started some of the officers. There's different levels of training for DUI in the DRE program, which is the drug recognition program. We're gonna have to invest the time and the money to send the officers to those, and those are expensive and they're extensive. They're very hard programs. A lot of times we have to send them out of state to get that training, but that's what it's gonna result in, is we're gonna have to go to a drug recognition expert to where they can testify about whether the person was impaired or not. You know, there's, right now, they've got some new products that have just come out that they say will give you a reading to the THC content in the blood and all that. None of those are proven yet that I know of. There's not a good system. I keep track of that pretty closely on an ongoing basis, and there's just a whole lot of that out there that we're gonna have to learn to deal with. And there's nobody in the country that's doing a good job with it yet. You know, when I talk to the people, the chiefs from the states that had legalized Oregon, Colorado, those states for quite a while, it's a mess.
Well, and you may not know for sure, like you said, they're trying different things all over, but say I'll pull a vehicle over and they've got, they've got it on them, or you smell it, isn't that almost like open container? What's your opinion on that?
The Supreme Court, has got a lot of cases on that, on what I smell, what I see, what I feel, what I hear. When an officer pulls a car over, the states that are gone to legalize marijuana, their districts, appellate courts, and the state Supreme Courts have been dealing with that. What it's coming down to in a nutshell, when you get through all of that, is that the smell will no longer be probable cause. So, we have our drug recognition dog here. As soon as medical marijuana becomes legal, the dog will be retired. We're losing our dog. It's done, because it can't be used to go around a car and indicate drugs in the car. It could be indicating legal marijuana. So the only thing that it'll be available for is like schools. We'll be able to run through schools. We'll be able to do some very limited things. If we have a search warrant, we'll still be able to use the dog to go in and locate the drugs we think are there. But we're gonna lose probable cause, we're gonna lose all this stuff.
Actually, the state is now in the process of doing all those types of rules and regulations. That's why they have got a task force put together, which I don't know when they're gonna. But I don't know how Colorado does it, but it does stick in court because those people were mandated and I had to sign off on them that they had completed. How they did it to make it stick.
That's after you get a conviction. The trick is gonna be to get people.
But whatever they were doing, it was working because they were then required to, they got fined like a regular DUI, and then they were required to complete with the drug courses that mandated. So I don't know.
That'll be interesting.
Yes, Will.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
would it be all right if we get, we're gonna have, Mr. Patel read off what he's done?
I'm kind of behind because I haven't read my minutes from the last week's meeting and I wasn't there, so I'm kind of in a fog right now, what y'all did, so.
Thank you for giving me the chance to quickly show my expression. Giving everybody a little direction that we could approach retail. Currently, in our ordinances and the language that we could use is similar. We could basically copy paste and create a C3 specifically for recreational cannabis use. This could solve a lot of our issues trying to convert old houses into retail businesses. It could revitalize a lot of our downtown, First Street,
You can
Boulevard.
take your mask off while you talk.
With the I-1 is where our opportunity is for the city to revitalize our industrial district. It works both ways, investors could want to build a new or go into an existing building, which could deter, or it depends. Some of our discussions from last work session was wind direction and pollution. So I've laid out some of the problems, some of the ideas that could help with a little bit of law enforcement with restricted hours and how it could help our tax receipts. So this is the direction that I'm thinking that the task force could go, or depending on what the commission gives us direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a lot of good suggestions.
You
there.
did.
Thank you. This is gonna be, a whole new experience for all of us, and I imagine we will be able to, see this, help us economically, you know what I mean? And Mr. Patel is right, we should utilize some of the land that's not being fully utilized. And it is zoned, like he puts it here, C and, C2, which really, which means a lot of the boulevard. I is industrial, and I don't know, that's where he says building, and, I will help with construction jobs as well, will be a new building. Let's see what happens, but I is the industrial area, which will be all the Whirly Mill area. I think the broom factory, all along Railroad Avenue on the, left-hand side coming east, those are industrial areas.
So just a quick assessment, could the infrastructure that's underneath handle an influx if there is new building built in the area?
I believe so. Anytime you have new construction, typically, engineers will contact the city and they'll give their estimated max peak flow. We'll need to know that to make sure we can keep up with the demand. As far as, the sewage, that shouldn't be an issue.
And actually, if you look at the city map, you have a huge amount of industrial land, and it's all undeveloped. Well, it's not that it's undeveloped, they developed, died, the industry that was there died, now it's vacant lot or vacant property with abandoned buildings. And then you got the C, which is, the boulevard and downtown, but you also have some other C area that's where the task force has to come in and see what they're gonna do about regulating it in that form. Or do they want it there, don't want it there? We also, I mean, I hope that the task force looks in, the fact is that we would like to see, like our boulevard, our downtown area, utilized, especially out here to the truck stop, you know what I mean? I mean, this is land that we don't know what to do, we can't do anything, we don't have money to clean, to have people clean it. But when there's an interest and money available, amazing enough how those places get cleaned and developed.
And it's like we also discussed last time, is somebody gets into one of those areas, we could actually hold it to a standard that they have to maintain.
Yeah.
To, you know,
Yeah,
people
got
that
more
are driving
control.
through there. Because the west side of town, it gets
mess.
scary coming through there. And if we can get people into that area, there's also, I want to bring up, and it's, at one time, and I haven't seen this map, at one time, and this is like a big field. And it was in the city limits, but it, you know, they had a map of what was gonna be streets on there at one point, and the city stopped growing, so that it never went to development. Could we take some of those areas and possibly make those, an industrial area for roads? If somebody was to wanna sell that, I don't know who owns the property, but I do know at one time it was meant to be developed, and it's up and around our district, off of 11th Street, and it's a big piece of property, and they're not real, I don't think they're using it for anything, I don't know who owns it. But I remember years ago seeing the map where they actually had streets, where streets and houses would have been, and the city stopped growing at that point, so nobody developed.
But remember, this is
What side of the
all,
road is it on? It's on the right hand side, so I guess you're going past Leif's house.
Yeah, going up.
Yeah, you'll see it off to the right side.
but remember one,
Is it county? Okay.
but remember one thing we have to remember is the fact is that when the body of the plants gives out an odor, you know what I mean, that's what it is. The school has 17 acres over there, or Mountain View is, you know what I mean, or something in that area. You know, but is it appropriate because of the neighborhood and the smell, is the question.
Yeah.
And our winds, that would be, have to be looked into. The wind.
Don't they use that for a head start? So-
No, they have a head start, but they also have some acreage in the back.
Oh, okay.
If I looked at the map, right?
Okay. So I want to be clear on something because I'm not sure about this. We don't want to take some of the old houses, right?
No.
Okay, that's what, because,
Well, we don't want it to be in a residential. We don't want
Right.
businesses to
okay,
start
because
in
that
residential.
was one of my concerns. I don't want us to.
But there are some, like the issue we dealt with not too long ago.
Yeah.
There are, you know, what do you do about some of these houses on First Street, on the north side of the boulevard, because that is a commercial zoned area, much like the south side, except the south side's more residential, I think, than what the north side of the boulevard is. That's something we gotta take consider. If there's a house there that can be refurbished into it, should we do the same thing we're gonna talk about on the south side of First Street on the north side? Because there is some people living there as residents, as we all know from our recent experience. Should they have to go through that? I have no problem using a house on a commercial zoned area, but I think we should take in consideration of the citizens living in that area.
But, I think we have the task force can recommend to the commission where we want it zoned.
Yes.
And if we feel that those are not appropriate areas, then the task force should come to us and say, no, we don't want this. We don't want them in the I-40 exit, except for the west side, because those are really commercial areas that we should develop into motels and all that. But we do have a lot of dead real estate out and down the boulevard, out downtown, this is an opportunity for us to stimulate that real estate in that area. This is something that the task force can come up with. And we have the industrial area here, Railroad Avenue, you have those abandoned, or with the boat plants and all that. I know they have a contamination, or something with the soil. You have the Chevron, the Exxon, and they have the Texaco. But when something comes in with money, they can afford to clean all that stuff. It's very expensive to get your title after you have a gas station. I had the EPA do ours on the boulevard, but at the same time, I had to hire a consultant out of Albuquerque to come in when Cypress was trying to buy it, what I mean? But, and they took all the adjacent property, not only mine, to see if there was any contamination that had gone into it.
I think at the end of the day, this is a good opportunity to take advantage of our opportunity zones that we've been said. We've got the best one, the largest in the state.
Yes.
And I think we're gonna be one of the few areas that can capitalize on all four phases of this recreational cannabis from the growing, because Clovis is close to Texas, but they don't have the water to grow it.
Right.
I'm sure people can try, but they can't handle the large growing. And I mentioned something to somebody, talking to the citizens and stuff, and somebody had made a comment about, so is this a lodger's tax? And I was like, no, but we got people from Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas that'll be coming down. They're not gonna come down to buy a $20 baggie. They're gonna come down. Now, when they cross that state line, it's gonna be illegal again, but that's not my problem.
Right.
But when they come down, they're gonna, chances are they're gonna stay a night. They're gonna eat, they might even do some, this is gonna be a stop, because we're gonna be the first thing they come across, and they're gonna take advantage. Look at Deming, Colorado. Was it Deming? By Farmington. Is that Deming?
Yeah.
They're right there. No, it's not Deming, it's
Durango.
Durango.
Right.
Yeah, that's right there, just on the other side of the state line, and they get the New Mexicans going up there all the time.
Yes.
And they've actually, that's a nice looking community. They've really done some work up there. Colorado has, over time, I think, found ways to utilize some of that tax dollars, which I hope,
they've done good.
as long as people don't expect it overnight, I think over the next 5 to 10 years, it'll benefit Tucumcari with where the dollars come in.
The other thing is, you mentioned you didn't want the containers, or what do you call it, make sure that that's in the ordinance, that we would not allow that.
Just to tell Madam Mayor, what it is some people that came up and they had made a suggestion. They wanted to get railroad card containers, put them in some of these empty lots and have drive-throughs. And we don't think that's a good idea, because probably half of these are gonna go out of business in the first year. And when they do, are they just gonna leave them? Chances
It's gonna
are.
look like extortion down the
Right.
boulevard.
We're gonna look worse off than
Right.
what we're at now. And so,
Well, that brings us up a question of how many facilities can we realistically be expecting? And maybe Pat, if you have some numbers on that, since you're here tonight, I mean, are we looking at, 2 labs or 1 lab, or
I'm
3
gonna be honest
growers
with
or
you.
5 growers, or 7 retail stores, 2 retail stores? How's that playing out in other states, in communities our size? How many can we be expecting?
I think the best article that I saw was the interview that Ron did with the mayor of Trinidad. You guys saw that in the paper? That gave a really good synopsis of the impact that it had on Trinidad, both the good and the bad. I don't think we know yet what the impact is gonna be in New Mexico. I do know on the economic impact side, there was an article in the Albuquerque Journal which said the fiscal impact report on the legislation that was passed showed there would be $9.4 million in additional gross receipts tax for New Mexico's local governments.
And they're basing most of it on the Texas border, where they say we have how many miles of that, and since Texas is still not legal.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Now, the concern I have is that if you take 9.4 million, you divide it by 33 counties, assuming we would generate as much gross receipts tax as Bernalillo County would, which is probably not the case.
Mhm.
Though you may be right about that, we may get more of that. That'd be $285,000 per county in additional gross receipts tax. That's something, but it's not gonna be our economic savior. But I don't think we really know yet, Chris, in terms of what the total impact will be until they get the rules promulgated and we know what we have to work with.
Well, I agree. I don't think we should look at this as the economic savior, but
No.
with everything starts something, you
Right,
know,
right.
and people have got to come down to do this stuff, which brings in more people. Bringing in more people brings in more businesses. So it's always good, you know, the oil company and the gas companies, they bring in a lot of money, but Hobbs didn't get rich
No.
just because they got there. It got rich because the families moved there, and it created more of a demand.
Same way
And
with
I-
parts
I
bad.
think the other piece that plays in here is not just the pot. It's not just the marijuana, it's the ancillary businesses,
Mhm.
many of which will be legal businesses. And the products that are produced that go along with that, that's where we'll probably see the economic impact.
The spin-off industry, or the supporting of the pot, is where we'll be looking at the most profitable part. Because that's where you're looking economic, if you look at it from that area. The other thing, Commissioner Arias, I'm gonna be honest, it would be lucky if we would even get a lab. Because I think there's only one or two in the state of New Mexico right now. And I think one of them is run by the state.
And you were saying the machinery that goes
It's
in it is very
$150,000.
expensive, so.
Just one machinery
One
alone.
machinery, yeah.
And there's lower levels of that you can operate a lab, but still you would need about 125 just to get to the minimum of the lab to start off.
Yeah, well, and especially if we're gonna be getting closer to residential areas, it might be important to mention that just because that area is zoned for it, doesn't necessarily mean one's gonna go there. I mean,
And that,
Here in my mind, and my thought is one or two retail shops.
Right.
That's what we can support. That's what our tourist industry might be able to support. You know, that way we're not, like you said, we're gonna see 5 pop up and 2 remain.
but remember one thing, we're limited in the city limits, everybody can go outside the county and do it. And that's the difference. Do we want the grocery stack, or do we want them just 5 miles outside of town, or? Yeah, no, I mean, we got to be realistic. We have to come in and get the most for our dollar. That's what we have to look at. And that's why we want the task force, just because it's zone commercial, we're not, I mean, it's up to the task force to recommend to us, no, we don't want, if we don't want it in the First Street area, then the task force can say, no, this is not a good area for it to be, area. We can zone it so that we have the control. And that's what the state is giving us, this control of zoning and limits and everything. And I don't think we should put limits, because like I tell you, if you put a limit, everybody would jump outside the county. And that's how simple it is.
It's easily to see on some of these dry counties.
Yeah.
Where's all the bars and where's all the liquor stores right there on the edge?
County line.
And the other counties getting
And
there.
why do they call a lot of the bars county line? Because they're right on the county line.
Well, now doesn't Columbus have a shop, have a dispensary,
They're medical.
Yeah.
medical?
Yeah, it's medical.
Okay,
Where?
in Columbus.
They got, actually they got 2. They got Pecos and they got Ultra Health. And Darren White has one there that they built, but they never have opened it, but I think they're working on it.
Okay.
And then there's another company, there's one in Patels, because we do referrals.
Alright. Okay, any more on that?
I guess just setting up, so is it gonna be the next work session that we ask our members from our districts to come and participate?
I think they're gonna meet by themselves out there.
I don't know, I thought we were gonna have them come in with us.
Okay. But remember
Well, I didn't ask Matt, I'm sorry, guys.
The whole deal that we have to look at is the fact is we have a time limit because the rules and regulations, they're gonna start issuing licenses in September according to the article that I read. So we need to have this by August.
Yeah.
So that this mess can be fixed.
Paul, who do you have from your district?
I hadn't really got
Okay,
anybody, but the
okay.
lady that owns one of the motels, she wants.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Right. And so, I think I would like to ask, Todd, would you like to be ahead of this task force?
Sure.
Because you and Ralph know more about it than I do, and I would rather have somebody in there that knows about it, and y'all
I've
can.
never used, I never.
Okay,
And so you have someone.
Thank you, Clinton.
That's neither here nor there. So, but
Never
if
held.
you'd be in charge of the
You're
task force, I
positive,
would
we'll put
appreciate
you on
it.
there.
So, okay.
Positive.
So have you got that in the minutes, that Todd's gonna, I was wanting Todd to
Good.
get it. Okay, and vice head is Ralph Moyer. Okay, so y'all can run that show.
Okay.
Okay. All right, do we have time to go ahead and discuss ordinance 1144-08-030 abatement 114? Was it mine, was it all upside down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that was the.
One page.
how the legal printed.
I have mine like this, and then there was like this.
I'm really tired, this is looking upside down to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it?
Not much of it.
What's the part that we're looking at?
It's specifically,
It just needs a part, this is the ordinance that when I came to the commission, we passed the nuisance ordinance.
right,
When Jared was here, and we used, what happened with Jared, they used a lot one from another,
Right.
city and copy it. And that's what we wanted to look at, I think.
what
it's-
page was it on?
So-
Page 9.
9?
page 9 on the bottom or on the, how it is on the PDF, it says page 10 of 23. Either one of those, it's 7.08.030.
Yeah,
9?
This is the one that
where
we
it says
amended,
abatement.
this is the one we amended previously, correct?
Which one is it?
Page 9?
No, the number.
Oh,
Page 9 or the actual reference number is 7.08030 abatement.
Oh,
Abatement.
30, abatement.
Yes, sir.
And we
okay,
have previously amended this one, correct?
No, this is the new ordinance that was put in when Jared was here. This is a nuisance ordinance that he brought before the commission.
Yeah, there was one that we looked at that we took mesquite out. Was this the same one?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the same one, yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
So what are we looking to take out?
okay, what we're looking at, and maybe Mark needs to explain, because he has dealt with this before, and I think you talked to how you got the situation. Just go ahead and read it, whatever you want.
Correct. So this has been brought up by a few individuals in regards to allowing the police chief, the fire chief, or the city manager to deem a building or structure to be a dangerous building. I know I've had a few people go through the court system that have brought this to my attention. They feel that it's not appropriate that city officials that are employed by the city without building inspector credentials should be allowed to deem that a dangerous building. I do agree to a point that I think this does put some liability on the city. I know previously when I was at community development and we had issues with code enforcement issues where maybe a building seemed to be a dangerous building, I reached out to the New Mexico Construction Industries Division. Mr. Doug Rapp out of Patels would come down and give me an official write-up. With that being said, they have the training, they have the credentials. I feel it takes off some of the burden and some of the liability on the city. So yeah, I could see where this could definitely be, set us up for a potential lawsuit in the future. I know our individuals, code enforcement, they are following this because it's law per the ordinance. I mean, we're fine with the city. I just don't know if it conflicts enough with state statutes where it could get us in a bind, deeming certain buildings, dangerous buildings without having the proper credentialing.
I know for a fact when I call up there, they said that if they don't have a license, they have really no business doing it because they don't have the proper credentials. Because structure is it's almost like, if you have a contractor, you have to know the rules and regulations of the state, and to deem a building unfit, you have to really know what a building is and where is the dangerous part, where's the weak points of the structure. And so actually, when I talked to licensing, they felt that this was not a right or a part of our ordinance if we didn't have people licensed. And if we did have people licensed, if all these people were licensed, then it'd be okay, but they're not licensed.
Well, if there was, if this was truly copied from another municipality, there are numerous municipalities throughout the state that have their own building inspectors. They are certified, or else they are the authority having jurisdiction. If we deem that and we choose to bring that upon ourselves, similar to some other things that the previous fire chief wanted to do, I do feel that it sets us up for liability, because now we are the authority having jurisdiction. We should have that credentials to be able to do that.
So we need to eliminate this.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is what was cited in the issue you brought up last
Yes.
night, correct?
That's correct. And I brought it up because I don't want to see the city in a jam on these things. If you don't have the license, you shouldn't be doing the work. You know, you must be credentialed. You must know. I wouldn't hire a non-contractor who doesn't know how to build my house, you know. And then I have problems, I can take him to court because I've hired somebody without a license. The liability falls on me. And not only that, we're trying to enforce something that we do not carry credentials on.
So is this on the agenda tonight
No, ma'am, it was just a discussion item.
Okay.
But we want to put it on the agenda next
for
time
the next time
because this has to be
to
omitted.
do away with?
I wanted to give the commission opportunity to discuss and see what they felt before we move forward.
As far as I'm concerned, I think we need to take it out of the nuisance order. We don't need to get ourselves in trouble.
You said that you would go to, an engineer or an
It's
inspector?
New Mexico Construction Industries Division. They are the authority that, for the smaller municipalities, they deal with all building inspections, foundation inspections. There's different branches of CID. They have electrical, utilities, for plumbing and whatnot. All that has to be inspected to be up to code per law. And to do so, like I said, we don't have the funding, we don't have the expertise to do that, so it's a lot easier just to let CID take care of it. We just have to schedule accordingly. Like I said, it has been done in the past. We had an issue with the building. We are able to reach out to them and request that they go do an inspection at a certain location.
What's the cost on you said?
Nothing.
Nothing.
At least it wasn't at the time.
And now they can come back and say the building's condemned.
I don't know if they could so much
Or
condemn it.
do we
They
still
could-
need an authority here, say, they come back and say, well, this building's unsafe and all that. They give you the statement of the points, and then you could go and condemn them on that.
Correct. That's typically how it's done. They'll provide you a report and show the deficiencies, and it truly is unfit, and which locations of the building are unfit. And then it's ultimately, I've seen a few processes. I believe Gallup goes through their commission and they pass an ordinance or resolution that officially states this is condemned, and you go through that process.
But it also holds better credentials in court.
Well, no, that's what I'm, my only concern, taking it completely out without, I just is, okay, what about Second Street? Does that eliminate Second Street?
So Second Street's exactly where I utilize CID most
Okay,
recently.
yeah, that's where you used to.
But now, say if we took this part out of the ordinance, that's what I'm saying, if we took this out of the ordinance, something like that, how would that affect that?
I don't
We're
think it
saying in
would.
here that nobody can, basically say, you know, is there a way we can put in the ordinance,
Reword it, maybe.
reword it where we have a licensed qualified
No,
person
that'd be a
there?
state license.
Well, no, that's, you know, that's what I'm getting at.
But for the process, I mean, yes, I think, it
Or
doesn't
do we-
have to be in the ordinance, but we
Okay.
could.
Put in the ordinance, we get the recommendation from CID, and then an entity at the commission,
But
following the
actually,
recommendation, issues it condemned.
actually, if we look at it, we should just go ahead and whoever does the coding portion of that one, it should be the one recommending it to, or referring it to the city manager who can contact. Because you see, when we were dealing with the Second and Main Street, that's where we got the state to come in. Because really, that's where, at that time, we were dealing with a different person. I can't remember who it was, but anyway, and I think that's what they recommend, that we get somebody who has the credentials to back us off, not necessarily our word, you know.
I just wanna make sure that, you know, we still have, you know, if we have
Still
a
covered.
building
Yeah.
similar to
It
that
can, yeah,
one,
it can,
that
oh,
we
yeah,
can still
definitely, and
go
it can be
do
it can be referred to the state, you know what I mean? I mean, to the building inspector. But they have a credential, we don't have a credential, and that's what the liability lies.
No, I
We
understand.
throw down a bill, have somebody throw down a building and wind up it's okay, then we have problem. So I think we just need to eliminate it and let the ordinance, the nuisance people just refer it, and then they refer it to the state, and they come down for Cal.
Well, I think we need to adjourn and,
Yeah, we need to put this, we need to ask Mark to put this on the agenda for next
yeah,
meeting.
yeah, we did. We asked you to go. So let's adjourn for now and then we'll meet back up, take about a 5-minute break.
So we do still have another item on the
Go
agenda.
ahead.
We do, but,
We'll have to have discussion during the regular meeting.
right.
I mean, it's a,
It's an
Action
action,
on committee house.
it's an action.
yes, sir.
Okay. Then you go home, fix supper.
Are you real?